When Ambassador Krell first received the transmission from Earth, he laughed so hard that his secondary lungs collapsed. Literally, he had to be rushed to the medical pod. The message was simple, elegant, and absolutely absurd. We, the human coalition, hereby accept your terms of peace. No plasma cannons, no fusion reactors weaponized, no exotic matter ordnance. We agree to your conditions completely. What Krell didn't know, what nobody knew, was that humanity had just discovered a loophole so spectacularly stupid, so magnificently clever, that it would redefine interstellar warfare forever. And it all started because someone on the Human Council had watched a fantasy documentary the night before signing the treaty. The Veridian Empire had spent 300 rotations preparing for this moment. 300 rotations of calculations, diplomatic overtures, and increasingly tense border skirmishes with the human warships that kept testing their defensive perimeters, like some kind of annoying spacefaring mosquito. The humans were fast, aggressive, and most irritatingly, creative. Their ships pulled maneuvers that shouldn't have been physically possible. Their soldiers fought with an enthusiasm that seemed almost fun. It was unnerving. Commander Thex-Kul stood in the observation deck of the flagship Paramount Authority, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. His skin flickered between shades of purple and grey, a nervous habit that his subordinates had learned to recognize. The Veridian were a proud species, 8 feet tall, 4 arms, crystalline exoskeletons that caught the light like living prisms. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had faced the Corellian Collective, and won. They had negotiated treaties with species so ancient that humans still hadn't discovered fire on most of their colony worlds. And now they were about to make peace with primates who had invented pizza only 3,000 years ago. The human delegation arrived on schedule. Commander Thex-Kul had to admit, grudgingly, that they looked almost dignified in their formal attire. There was Sarah, the chief negotiator, with sharp eyes and a sharper smile. Beside her stood Marcus, the military attaché, whose job was apparently to look intimidating while being slightly shorter than most Veridian children. Then came the rest of them, Priya, the weapons specialist, who kept scribbling notes and grinning like she'd just won something. Jackson, the logistics coordinator, who looked perpetually confused but competent. And finally, there was old Dr. Emmett, the cultural liaison, who seemed to find everything mildly amusing. "Welcome," Commander Thex-Kul said, his voice modulating through the translation matrix. "We have drafted the treaty. The terms are simple. No advanced weaponry. No kinetic accelerators above sustainable energy thresholds. No mass driver systems. No directed energy weapons. All military engagements shall be conducted through conventional means only. This shall usher in a new era of peace between our peoples." Sarah nodded seriously. Marcus nodded. Priya wrote something down and bit her lip to keep from smiling. That should have been Thex-Kul's first warning. "We accept your terms completely," Sarah said, extending her hand in the human greeting ritual. "No advanced weapons. We understand the spirit of this peace accord entirely." The treaty was signed, holographically witnessed by the Veridian Council, burned into every diplomatic database across 3 sectors. The humans celebrated quietly. The Veridians celebrated with more fanfare, symphonic broadcasts, public gatherings, official proclamations about entering a new golden age of galactic cooperation. It lasted exactly 4 weeks. The first incident occurred over the settlement of Vex Minor, a mid-tier colony world that both species had agreed to share resources from. A Veridian mining operation was in full swing when the humans showed up. Nothing unusual. Trade, commerce, the boring underbelly of diplomacy. Then someone fired a projectile. Not a laser, not a plasma bolt, not anything that registered on the Veridian early warning systems designed to detect advanced weapons. Nope, someone had fired a wooden bolt, a crossbow bolt, to be specific. Fletched with feathers, moving at approximately 200 kilometers per hour, it punched through the viewport of the mining supervisor's office and embedded itself directly into his chair. The chair he'd been sitting in approximately 3 seconds earlier. Attached to the bolt was a note, written in surprisingly neat handwriting. It said, "This is not an advanced weapon. Good." The bolt was signed by someone named Captain Riley. "This is ridiculous," Commander Thex-Kul said, examining the projectile in the evidence chamber. His skin had shifted to a shade of red that his medical officer had never seen before. "This is a primitive instrument. A child's plaything. Where did they even acquire the materials?" "They're from Earth, sir," one of his subordinates pointed out nervously. "Trees are abundant. Apparently, they have entire forests of them." "Forests of..." Thex-Kul couldn't finish the sentence. His neural processing was genuinely struggling to comprehend the implications. The second incident happened 2 days later. A Veridian convoy was traveling through human-controlled airspace when they detected something moving toward them. The sensors registered it as negligible threat level. The impact, however, was not negligible. A catapult, an actual medieval siege weapon, had launched a 10-kilogram stone ball directly at the convoy's cargo transport. It punched through 3 sections of hull before stopping. The written message on the cargo manifest now read, "Trebuchet deployment successful, please advise." That was when Marcus sent his response. 3 words transmitted on open channels, encoded in every possible format. "Gain recognizes gain." Commander Thex-Kul assembled the Emergency War Council. "They're weaponizing medieval technology," General Vaughn stated flatly. She was Thex-Kul's second in command, forearms folded across her armored chest. "This violates the spirit of the peace treaty." "Does it?" asked Commander Thex-Kul slowly. "The treaty specifically forbids advanced weapons. The human legal team has defined advanced as requiring post-industrial technological development. A crossbow requires neither computers nor advanced material science. A trebuchet is essentially applied mathematics and wood." "They're mocking us," General Vaughn said flatly. "Perhaps," Thex-Kul conceded. "Or perhaps they're being precisely technically, legally compliant with the treaty, while simultaneously destroying the purpose of it through sheer creative interpretation." The third incident was the turning point. A Veridian research station on Kepler 452d reported that they had been under siege, actual siege warfare for 6 hours. The humans had constructed wooden fortifications at a distance and were hurling projectiles at the station using siege weaponry. Some projectiles were flaming. Some projectiles were filled with something that smelled like organic waste. One particularly creative projectile was a large pumpkin. A pumpkin, launched from a catapult, with the message, "How are your defensive postures?" Specifically. That was when someone in the Veridian military finally checked the fine print of the treaty, specifically Article 47, subsection C, paragraph, which had been written by human legal experts and approved by the Veridian Council in a late-night session. The term advanced weapons shall be interpreted as any weaponry utilizing technology or principles developed after the year 1500 CE in standard Earth historical measurements. Weapons and weaponry systems predating this temporal marker shall be considered conventional for the purposes of this accord. Someone in the Veridian legal department had failed to ask the obvious question, what happened between 1500 CE and now? The humans had asked that question. They had asked it very carefully, and then they had gathered every historical military manual, every medieval combat technique, and every siege weapon design from their entire historical database. By the end of week 5, human longbowmen were positioned across 7 different Veridian settlements, not attacking, just present, standing on hills, occasionally firing arrows at targets that were suspiciously close to Veridian administrative buildings. Every arrow had a little note attached. By the end of week 6, the humans had established what they called historical military zones in 3 sectors. These zones contained working replicas of every siege engine known to Earth history, ballistas that could throw objects the size of cars, trebuchets that could launch flaming projectiles across continental distances, longbows that fired arrows with such velocity they could pierce Veridian light armor. And every single weapon was legal. Commander Thex-Kul stared at the latest communication from Sarah, the human negotiator. She had sent a single message. "We look forward to productive peace negotiations. Have you considered the effectiveness of mounted cavalry? His secondary lungs seized up again, but this time it wasn't from laughter. The Veridian Empire had conquered galaxies through superior firepower and technological dominance. They had never, and I mean never, encountered an enemy that chose to fight them with horses, wood and what could only be described as enthusiastic historical reenactment. But as Commander Thex-Kul soon discovered, sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't the one that destroys the fastest. It's the one your opponent legally has every right to use, and humanity had just discovered that loophole. They were about to drive a cavalry charge through it. The emergency session of the Veridian High Command lasted 17 hours. No breaks, no recess, just pure distilled panic mixed with grudging admiration. They're systematically analyzing our defensive perimeters, General Vaughn explained, projecting holographic displays across the war room. Every settlement we've built has been constructed with the assumption that threats would come from advanced weapon systems, energy shields calibrated for plasma and particle beams, hull reinforcements designed to withstand kinetic accelerators, defensive protocols optimized against electronic warfare, and medieval siege weapons. Commander Thex-Kul asked. Would punch through most of our defenses without difficulty, General Vaughn admitted. The energy requirements to stop a 10-kilogram stone ball moving at 200 meters per second would drain a shield generator in approximately 4 minutes of continuous fire. Another general, Cuss, younger and angrier, stood up from his seat. We should file a formal complaint with the Galactic Council. This is clearly a violation of the treaty's intent. Based on what argument? Asked Judge Meridian, the legal advisor. She was Veridian but frighteningly objective. The humans have complied with every single clause of the treaty. They have not used any weaponry developed after 1500 Earth Standard Time. They have submitted all their military deployments for inspection. Every siege weapon has been verified as historically accurate. They have even provided documentation tracing the designs back to medieval Earth records. They're mocking us. Technically accurate mockery is still accurate compliance, Judge Meridian replied, which was not helpful. What made everything worse was that the humans weren't just sitting around looking smug. They were actually building. Reports flooded in from every settlement. The humans were establishing training camps. They were recruiting. They were conscripting soldiers into what they called Historical Warfare Operations Division, and according to the intercepted communications, they were having the time of their lives doing it. Commander Thex-Kul received a personal message from Sarah. It arrived with a video attachment. The video showed Sarah standing in front of what appeared to be a massive wooden structure. Behind her were hundreds of human soldiers. They were wearing leather armor. They were carrying pikes. Some of them were actually on horses, actual biological horses, descendants of Earth creatures that the humans had somehow transported across interstellar distances, specifically for this purpose. Hello, Commander, Sarah said, her expression somewhere between a smile and a predatory grin. We wanted to give you a preview of our mounted pike regiment. According to historical records, formations like this defeated cavalry charges, held defensive positions against numerically superior forces, and maintained battlefield dominance for approximately 300 years. We've trained our soldiers extensively. They're quite enthusiastic about their work. In fact, I should probably tell you that morale has never been higher. There's something about medieval combat that speaks to the human soul, you know. It's visceral, real. We're looking forward to demonstrating its effectiveness. The video cut off. They're insane, Koss declared. They've gone completely insane. Or they've achieved what we failed to achieve, General Vaughn said quietly. They've found our weakness. The weakness was philosophical more than military. The Veridian civilization had built itself on the foundation of technological advancement. Every problem was solved with better technology. Every threat was countered with superior firepower. They had never developed the tactical flexibility to fight enemies who deliberately rejected technology. They had no doctrine for it, no training protocols, no psychological preparation for combat that looked like something from a historical museum. The humans, on the other hand, had centuries of historical records showing exactly how medieval warfare functioned. They had access to every text, every manual, every strategic analysis. They knew the vulnerabilities of pike formations. They understood the logistics of sustaining arrow fire. They had studied cavalry tactics across multiple Earth cultures and time periods. And most importantly, they had watched enough fantasy movies to know that sometimes the low-tech option was exactly the right choice. Over the next month, the situation escalated in ways that nobody had anticipated. The humans established what they called historical military zones across 17 Veridian settlements. These zones were technically separate from Veridian territory, a loophole they had discovered in the territorial clauses of the treaty. Within these zones they conducted historical military exercises. In practice this meant they were testing siege weaponry, practicing cavalry maneuvers, and generally behaving like an occupying force. But technically, and this was the word that kept appearing in every Veridian legal filing, technically they were violating nothing. Marcus, the military attaché, sent a communication to Commander Thex-Kul. It was accompanied by a tactical diagram showing the positions of human forces across 17 different sectors. "We've established what we call buffer zones," Marcus explained in the message. "These zones exist to protect our interests and our personnel. They're completely consistent with Article 19 of the treaty, which grants both signatories the right to establish security perimeters around key installations. Of course, our security perimeters happen to be quite large, and they happen to contain siege weapons. Lots of siege weapons. You might describe it as comprehensive security. Hope you understand." What made the situation genuinely terrifying from a Veridian perspective was that it was working. The psychological impact of having your civilization's most advanced settlement surrounded by humans in medieval armor, armed with crossbows and pikes, was more devastating than anyone had calculated. Reports came in of Veridian officers becoming frustrated. Some were requesting transfers, others were requesting early retirement. One particularly concerning report indicated that a Veridian general had simply asked for the location of the nearest human cavalry unit so he could surrender and get it over with. Dr. Emmett, the human cultural liaison, sent a lengthy communication to the Veridian Council explaining the human perspective on all this. It was surprisingly compassionate. "We understand this is frustrating," Emmett wrote. "Humans have faced technology superior forces many times throughout history. Every time we faced an enemy with better weapons, we had to find new ways to fight. Sometimes that meant developing our own technology. Sometimes that meant using terrain, using numbers, using psychology. The medieval period taught us something valuable. Sometimes the most important weapon is not the one in your hand. It's the one in your mind. It's understanding that your enemy has limitations too. It's finding the gap between what they expect and what you actually deliver. We're not trying to humiliate you. We're trying to teach you what we learned. That every system, no matter how advanced, has a weakness. We just found yours." The message concluded with an invitation. "Would you like to schedule peace talks? We can do them anywhere you're comfortable. Though we should mention our delegation will be bringing trebuchets. For security purposes, of course." Commander Thex-Kul actually laughed this time. Just a small laugh. But it was genuine. He called General Vaughn into his office. "What if," he said slowly, "we just admitted that we lost?" General Vaughn's skin flickered with surprise. "Sir, not a military loss, not yet. A strategic loss. A tactical concession. The humans have outmaneuvered us using our own rules against us. They've done what military strategists have been trying to do for decades. They've found a way to defeat us without actually defeating us. And the most infuriating part, they did it with wood and string. Sir, the Council will accept it because the alternative is we keep pretending our shields can stop crossbow bolts for the next 100 rotations, and they know it won't work." Thex-Kul stood up. "Send a message to Sarah. Tell her we're ready for those peace talks." The negotiation chamber was neutral territory, a space station orbiting a binary star system that neither species had colonized. Sarah arrived with Marcus, Priya, Jackson, and Emmett. They were not wearing medieval armor this time. That was a mercy. Commander Thex-Kul arrived with General Vaughn and Judge Meridian. "So," Sarah said, settling into her chair, "let's talk about what happens next. You've made your point. Thex-Kul said. You've demonstrated that technological superiority is not the only path to strategic dominance. That's not actually what we were trying to demonstrate, Sarah replied. We were trying to show you something more important. We were trying to show you that humans don't think like you do. We don't optimize for the obvious solution. We look for the gap. We find the loophole. We read the fine print while everyone else is looking at the big picture. And when we find something, we commit to it completely. No half measures. Just full throttle commitment to whatever strategy we've chosen. So what do you want? General Vaughn asked. Territory? Resources? Recognition as equals? We want you to understand something, Marcus said. The treaty was supposed to prevent war, but it created a new kind of competition. We proved we could compete with you on different terms. Now what? Thex-Kul considered this carefully. In his civilization, this would normally be the moment where one side destroyed the other. But the humans had demonstrated something that transcended normal military logic. They had demonstrated adaptability, creativity, the ability to weaponize something as simple as historical knowledge. I propose, Thex-Kul said, that we establish a joint council, the Veridian Empire and the Human Coalition. We share military knowledge. We share strategic understanding. We stop trying to defeat each other and start trying to learn from each other. Sarah smiled. That's the first sensible thing you've said all conversation. There is one condition, General Vaughn added. The medieval weapons go away. No more siege warfare. Sarah's smile widened. Oh, we're keeping those. They're just for training now, and defense. Mostly defense. But Commander Thex-Kul makes a good point. Joint Council sounds perfect. We can teach you about medieval tactics. You can teach us about advanced weaponry. We can establish a mutual defense pact. One that protects us from outside threats. There is one other thing, Jackson said. Speaking for the first time, the humans would like formal recognition of our right to maintain historical military training facilities for cultural preservation purposes. Judge Meridian's skin flickered with what might have been amusement. Of course you would. Plus, Priya added, we'd like permission to establish crossbow training academies on all Veridian worlds. For, cultural exchange. Commander Thex-Kul should have been angry. Instead, he was starting to understand. The humans weren't trying to conquer. They were trying to prove something, and they had succeeded. They had proven that an advanced civilization could be humbled by a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest weapon is the one your opponent doesn't expect. Fine, Thex-Kul said. But we get to establish advanced technology training facilities on human worlds. Deal, Sarah said. We'll need those when the Carillion Collective shows up, and trust me, they will show up. They always do. How do you know? General Vaughn asked. Because, Sarah said, with absolute certainty, if they hear that humanity defeated an advanced civilization using medieval technology, they're going to want to test that theory. And when they arrive, we'll need your firepower, and you'll need our creativity. That's how this works. That's always how this works. Commander Thex-Kul stood up and extended all four of his arms in the Veridian gesture of peace. Sarah stood up and extended her two arms in the human gesture of greeting. Their hands met halfway. Then let's prepare, Thex-Kul said. Together? Together, Sarah agreed. And if the Carillion Collective tries anything, they're going to discover something very important. The humans don't just bring crossbows to negotiations. We bring the determination to learn, adapt, and absolutely destroy anything stupid enough to challenge us. Medieval weapons today, advanced technology tomorrow, and the day after that, whatever it takes. In the observation deck of the space station, Priya watched the handshake through the transparent aluminum viewport. She was grinning. Jackson noticed. What? I'm already working on designs for biological siege weapons, Priya said. Imagine the possibilities. Jackson shook his head. You're going to start an arms race? Nope, Priya replied. We already did. We just won the first battle with sticks and string. Imagine what we can do when we're trying. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Carillion Collective received reports of what had happened. They read the information carefully, they analyzed the data, and they reached one universal conclusion. Humanity was either the stupidest species in the galaxy or the most terrifyingly clever. Either way, an encounter was inevitable, and when it came, nobody knew which interpretation would prove correct. But everyone was certain of one thing: the universe would never be the same.